Okay, let's get going for today. Last time we did a login. Today we're going to create something else with JavaFX. So we're on class 10. You can download the before class content. There's two of them. Okay, there's code sample 1, code sample 2. On class 10, download them, get them ready. While you're doing that, I'll go over some slides. Okay, today we're going to look at text editors.
Hello.
Oh, wrong one. Hello. Okay, we're going to look at editors, text editors and HTML editors. We're going to make our own. JavaFX has a nice built-in utility that we could use. We're going to take a look at that. What's nice about an HTML editor is I have full functionality of a text editor, but I can also make that text rich. So I can format the text, I can indent, bullet, like what you'd see in an email. So if I'm trying to send an email, got full functionality. I can put titles, paragraphs, tabs, put pictures in there, background colors. Okay, and JavaFX has a lot of nice built-in functionality. So this is what it's going to look like. You can think of a word editor as well. Okay, so if I were to try to build this by scratch, you can think about how hard it would be trying to change each individual paragraph, indent, different sizes, bold, underlined, put a number list in there, keep track of it, and display it all nicely. This is what it's going to look like. You're going to have a toolbar up at the top and then some text down below. Okay, what's nice, and you'll notice the name is HTMLEditor. So let's say I look at this example here. It has headed and then some text with a underline or a link. Okay, in the HTML, this is what it's going to look like. I have an HTML tag. In the body, I have an H1 and then some text that's underlined that's inside of a div. So if you took web development, you can think of the underlying structure of how this is going to be stored. I'm going to have start and close tags, and that's how I can keep track of all the different text in the text editor. Because the HTML editor class is an extension of the node class, we can also apply visual effects to it as well. Okay, so like transitions, animations. In JavaFX, it's really easy. If I want to add an HTML editor, I basically create an instance of that class. So they have an HTML editor class. I create an instance of it, and I can set the properties to it. Okay, then I put that on the scene and then show it on the stage. There's already a library. But we will look at building one of our own as well. Okay, with those few lines right there, and I click Run, this is the default size and how it looks, the appearance. Okay, so we can change some of it. Maybe we want to take some controls away or add some controls or make the appearance look different. Maybe you don't like the gray, you want to change some of the colors. Okay, we could do that as well. Here's an example. If we want to edit some of the implementation, okay, maybe I could change the default font size or default border color, style. Okay, I can actually change the appearance of the text editor itself. One bad thing about using this library, though, is we need to follow what they have implemented. So if there's something that you want to do and it's not available, well, either you build it yourself or you try to find an add-on. So they have certain requirements that you must fulfill. And if you want to do some custom work, it's harder to do so using the library. But here you can see the borders changed. You can see the text is different as well. So I can change the style of the HTML editor just a little bit, slightly. Okay, but custom work would be difficult. We can also put some initial text. Okay, so I want to add initial text. I got to have it in HTML. As long as it's in HTML, I can put the text there in the editor. Library. Okay, this is what it would look like with some predefined text. A lot of times on sites, you'll see something that says, please fill in your content. When you click, then it disappears. Okay, the other nice thing, though, is this thing outputs HTML. So I can use this to actually build a website. And that's what a lot of the pre-built websites do. They use an HTML editor. You build your site just how you want it to look. Then you output the HTML from the editor and upload it to a website. Okay, so the output, or if I build a website from this, I can output it and also display that on the web because it has all the HTML tags that I need. Okay, this is what it's going to talk about. I can produce the HTML code, have it look like this, and make my my web page. Okay, this is what it would look like. It's basically the exact same because this is an HTML editor. So it's built with HTML. It also outputs HTML. So how it looks in the editor will also be how it looks on the web page. Okay, so let's look at it in the code. I'm going to start with the first example. Okay, so I'm in NetBeans. We're in DocumentEditor number 1. Remember, this is JavaFX, so it extends the application class. For me, I like to put the title, width, and height up at the top. Okay, have those easy accessible. Then you'll see the start method, which is our entry point. If I scroll down, I have a little bit of pre-written code. So what I've done is make box as my root. VBox, remember, is a vertical box, so I'm stacking things on top of each other. So I have a vertical box. I've set some padding. I've set some spacing. Inside the vertical box is also a grid pane, so I can mix the two. The first lecture we did a stack pane, then we did a grid pane, and now I have two of them. I have a vertical box with a grid pane inside of it. Okay, what I'm going to do is, go ahead. You could. You can have a grid pane and then inside of a VBox. Whichever one is loaded last will be on top. So the grid pane will be on top. That's correct. That's correct. Okay, if I run this, hopefully it runs at least, something pops up. Okay, we basically have a window ready to go. So I've created the scene, set the seed, and I've showed the stage. What I want to do is make a kind of like an email system. I want to be able to send emails. So you'll see here to, carbon copy, and BCC. That's what you're going to see in your email. So I have a send to. This is a choice box, so it's like a drop down. When I have a drop down, you can select if you want to send it to somebody and how you're going to send it. Okay, so the first thing why I have a VBox is I'm going to have kind of things stacking on top of each other. So the first thing I need to make for the send-to would be a text field. Okay, they need to enter an email address. Okay, so this is going to be my text field 2. So this is my text 2. It's a text field. Create an instance of that class. Okay, and there's a little shortcut for doing these imports. If you click Control-Shift-I or Command-Shift-I, you're going to see this pop up. And you could do multiple imports at a time. Okay, so Control-Shift-I, Command-Shift-I if you're on a Mac. And you can select which ones. If I open up this drop-down, you'll see one's Java, one's JavaFX. We'll select the JavaFX one. JavaFX scene, control text field. Okay, no errors. Okay, for me, I'm going to set the preferred size for this. Okay, this is a preferred size, so it may not necessarily be true. This is what I prefer it to be. If the user interface will allow it, it will be that size. If not, it may resize it a little bit. It will, if it's allowed to. There's enough space. Okay, so I'm going to have a send to button. Beside that, I'm going to have a text field so you can enter in your email address. And I want these things side by side. Okay, so I want the send to drop down and then the text field right next to it. So I'm thinking about this, a good user interface design would be an H box. Okay, that's a horizontal box. I'm going to put everything together. This is my send to box. I want them side by side. I'm going to put them in an H box. I'm going to set the alignment. Okay, I'm going to have them centered a little bit to the left. And I'm going to add the text field and the send to choice box. Okay, so I have my send to box. This is a little bit different than a grid pane. I have to first get the children. Okay, so I have to get the other nodes that are in the H box. Right now there's nothing. And then I could do add each one individually, or I can do an add all, where I add the send to choice box and my text to text field at the same time. Okay, but you're not going to see it. I also need to add it on the grid. Okay, it's going to be at the top. First column, first row. If you do a Command-Shift-I or Control-Shift-I, it adds the import for you automatically because there's only one. Okay, we added it to the grid. Why is it not showing up? Okay, we have a VBox. We have a grid. I just put an H box with 2 elements, and I added it to the grid, but it's not showing up. Seeing here, we have root. Who said that? Good. So we have a lot of elements here. We have the root. We have the grid pane. We have an H box. We put the H box in the grid pane. We put the root in the scene. we never connected the grid pane and the root. Okay, so make sure you have your everything connected there. If I do root, get children as well because it's a VBox. And here I'm going to do an add. Okay, run it again. There is my send to. So I could do to or carbon copy. Put your email field. Okay, so we're starting to make this. So you're going to see this quite a bit. I may have vertical boxes to put things on top of each other. Inside that, I may have a horizontal box, put things side by side. In that, I may have a grid pane so I can organize it in a table. So I can combine these to make the user interface look desirable. If I'm sending an email, next thing that comes is like a subject. Okay, a subject. I need to let the user know what they're entering it in, so I'll have a label. This label is going to be my subject. And for them to enter stuff in, they're going to have a text field. Okay, for the text field, I can set the preferred size. Okay, you're going to have to get used to these methods. So if I don't know what methods I can do, I could do the dot notation, and up pops a list. So I want to set some size. I can scroll down to the sets. You'll see getters and setters. Okay, I can do set alignment. They also have a set preferred column count. So you'll see it's bold. That's a common method used. If I click on it, it'll tell you what it does. Okay, so it sets the value of the column count, which is the preferred number of text in the column. So it's used to calculate the preferred width. So let's say here I do 45. So 45 characters for the title. Okay, so I have an H box. Set the alignment on it as well. Okay, so everything matches. We did a position center left. And I could add one at a time, but I'm going to add them all at once. Okay, and then add it to my grid. So I want this to be right below the send to box. Okay, so I'll do a grid. Now some students say, you're using a grid, why don't you just take advantage of the grid and to put things side by side? So we can as well. Maybe I have a grid, I have more columns, put things side by side. But what's one nice thing about an H box is it's going to handle that for me, and I can also change the alignment on it. So maybe on the first H box it's to the right, the second H box is to the left, so I have more control over those individual items. If you do a Control-Shift-I, Command-Shift-I, add the import for the label. Make sure it's JavaFX. Okay, here's what I got so far. Okay, you see these two are different sizes. We can fix that up here in a little bit. The last thing I need for my email sender here is this HTML editor. So I have a send to, I have a subject. Here's how I'll fill the content. Okay, so HTML editor is really easy. I can just do HTML editor, create an instance of that class. Okay, add the import. Can set the preferred size. So it took a little bit of trial and error, but after testing it out, I came out with 600 by 500. Okay, look the best. Go ahead. What's that? Sure. So for like a grid pane, it's assumed that there's one node in each cell. You can put more, but then it gets complicated. With the VBox, you can think of it like just a box. And I'm putting items into this box, any items. But if I put an item into the box, it will override the previous items. So the first step is to get whatever's in the box that's already in there and then add it to the end of it. So you can think of it almost like a list. You can think of the box like a list. If I don't get what's in the list already, I'll override all the values. So for an HBox, it has no control over each cell. I just have a list of items. I need to get the list first and then add it to the end. That way I don't override the previous nodes. Mm-hmm. Have an index. That's correct. You can think of it like that. I mean, that's not what's happening, but you can think of it like that. That's correct. That's correct. Because I can control each individual cell. Yep. Okay, here I can add this to my grid so we can see it. Okay, on the grid I can just add it directly. And this will be in the 0, 3rd row. First column, 3rd row. Okay, add your import. I did a Control-Shift-I, it added automatically because there's only one. And here's what you have now. So with about 15 minutes of work with JavaFX, I can create an email sender. Okay, and this HTML editor has a lot of control. So I can add text, can bold some of that text, can underline some of it, can make a numbered list. Okay, I can center some text, write a line, whatever you want to do. Go ahead. The imports are from the JDK. So JavaFX is a standard in JDK. So I'm importing the Java library here, development kit. We have development kit 8 from, I can't remember which version, like 6 or 7. JavaFX was a standard. So as long as I have the JDK there, I can import JavaFX. The libraries would be written with most likely Java, but we'd have to look. We'd have to look. Most likely it's Java. But that's a good question. Some of these libraries may be written in other languages. but we don't have access to the code. I just do the import. However they wrote the code, I'm importing it. Some libraries are open source, so I can see how they've written it, what language they've written it in. Some are not. I just call the library, I can only use it. So unless it's open source, we wouldn't know. But I'm going to say most likely Java. You can do, we did that last time. I can't think of what it is. It's set the grid lines to true. Okay. So let's do that. If I want to set the grid lines to true, I can do it on the, let's see, we have the grid. Set grid lines visible equal to true. And we can see what's going on there. Okay, here's what I have. So you can see it's really nice and neat. I have one column, several rows, have a little bit of gap in between, a little bit of spacing. That's correct. Go ahead. Did it? It's HTML code. That whole editor is HTML. So if it imported the site, it'll load it. And you can export sites too. So it's pretty powerful. It's pretty powerful. Okay, last thing you would need for this to work would be some type of button. Okay, so I'm going to do this below the root. This is why I have my VBox. Okay, so I'm going to have my button here. It's going to be my send button. Okay, I'm going to put the button also in an HBox so I can change the alignment. This is my save button box. So you're going to see I'm doing a lot of HBox and vertical boxes because I have more control. I can line some stuff left, some stuff right. If I just had it in the grid pane, everything has to follow the same alignment. So I could do center everything or left align everything. If I put it also in an HBox, I can change the alignment on a specific element. For example, on this save button box. On all the other ones, I did center left. This one I can do center right. Okay? If I just did that on the grid, it would go on each column and row, so each cell. The problem with the HBox is I have to add the button to it. So there's one more step. I have to add the button to the box and then add the box to the layout. That's correct. Relative to your HBox. So wherever your HBox is, it's going to be relative inside the HBox. Initialize. That's correct. That's correct. So here I'll add it to the root. Okay, root is a VBox, so I have to get the children on it. And I'll add send button box. Okay, so there's two steps there. Okay. Oh, did I do save button? Well, let's not go back now. We'll just call it save button. Should be send button. What's that? Well, I messed the name up there. I should have said send button the whole time, but instead of going back and changing, we'll just leave it. Okay, I'll do a Control-Shift-I. You'll see there's multiple options there. Make sure you select the JavaFX import. Okay, click OK. The button should be there, but it doesn't do anything. Okay, there's my send button. And we can fix up the layout here in a little bit. Okay, see it's kind of off to the side a little bit. We can fix that up. But remember, with a button, if I wanted to do something, I need an event listener. So I want to click on this button and then it does something. It performs some action. Okay, so if you're using this for your final project, we'd have like a send button, a set on action event listener. Okay, I'm using what's called, I don't know if we talked about a lambda. Did we talk about a lambda expression? Okay. Let me go back one app real quick. I was thinking we did, but we may not have. Okay, you don't have to write this. Let me just show you this. And then you could write the second one. Okay, last time we did an event listener, it looked like this. Okay, we had some weird syntax. Let me switch this up here. We had some weird syntax. We had a set on action method. Inside that had some weird object that we're creating that had no name. And then I had these weird triangles with something in the middle. And then I override a handle method. Okay, this is the standard for an event listener, how it's programmed. This is how it looks. This is how the developers made it. But you can see here there's a lot of code just to write that event listener. Okay, after I add all my imports, okay, all JavaFX, you don't have to write this, you can just write the shorter one. This is what it would look like, and whatever I want to happen goes in this handle method. Well, after I write this, you'll see a little warning message there. Okay, and if I hover over it, it says, hey, you can use what's called a lambda expression. So it's basically a shortcut. Whenever I have an event listener here, event handler, every single time it's going to look like this. The method structure is the same every single time, but there's a lot of code there to write. So it's saying, instead of writing all that code, why not use a lambda expression? So if I click on the warning and say use lambda expression, this is equivalent. So here, let me comment this out. Let me copy this, comment this out. And you can just look at the shorter one. These two are equivalent, the commented out one and the not commented out one, or the highlighted one. So you see here I have in parentheses action event E. That's basically the parentheses to the handle method. This little arrow here is called a lambda expression. It's basically a shortcut to handle new event handler, all the parameters up here, and the override. Okay, so they said, why not use a lambda expression, which is this right here, and it's much shorter. That's correct. They're the same, like a shorthand. Save a little bit of time. So you can write this one here and know they're the same. And we're not going to send emails today. We'll just do a print. But if you're going to send an email, it'll be right here. Okay, in your action event listener. And I could put these event listeners anywhere. Maybe when they click on the HTML editor, it does something special, gives them a message. Or maybe when they click on the text editor, text field, it gives them a message, says to enter an email. So I can put these event listeners anywhere, but usually they're on buttons or some type of action. That's right. Mm-hmm. In my mind, it's like a code. It's always running, waiting for something to happen. So it's just running, waiting for something to happen. When it happens, that code is triggered, and then it does something. So it's listening, just sitting there listening, and when the event happens, then it does something. I did. So let me go back. Let me go up, actually. We added two. We had the action event, and it was the event handler, but we're not using it anymore. So probably just this one right here, action event. Let me take these out. Let's see what it looks like. Okay, so here it is. I'll click on the error, and then do the JavaFX one, action event, and then you should be good. For the commented out one, you need one more, which is your event handler. Okay, we're not going to talk too much about it, but remember what this is here. And later in the semester, we're really going to get into lambda expressions. So this is a lambda expression, which you can think of it as a shorthand, a shortcut. Okay, and we'll talk more about lambda expressions later. Any questions with this? You'll see that one text field is a little bit short. You can always go up and change that preferred size. If I scroll up a little bit, now here on that text field I had 100. Okay, if I run it again, you'll see it's a little small. So you could do something like maybe like 300. And this is how I build my UI. So I'll run this, see how it looks. Okay, it's still a little bit small, so I'll maybe go up to 500. Run it, see how it looks. Okay, it's getting better. If I put another 100, it may be too big, so I may do like a 550. Okay, it's getting close. It shouldn't. If you set it in pixel values, it'll stay the same. But if I had like a 4K screen, it may look really tiny, yeah. But if it's on the same screen, it should remain the same size, pixel values.
So how would you set it to like dynamically change that?
Maybe do like a percentage, like 40% of the window size. You may have to use a different one. Let's see which this one takes. It's a good question. This one will take a double value. I'm thinking this is pixel size. Let's see here. Property for overriding the preferred width should only be set if the region internally computed preferred width doesn't meet the application layout needs. So that's what I was talking about. It's a preferred width. It's not an exact width. It just says double. I'm assuming it's pixel values. But if we use, later we're going to talk about CSS. If we use CSS, we can do percentages. I'm sure there's a method somewhere here we can do percentage, but not this method. When we get into our CSS, we will look at percentages. Okay, so my final value was actually 533, a little bit smaller, and then I changed the size of that send to text box. I set the preferred width on it. So I did preferred width of 100 on it. Oh yeah, thank you. And then set the preferred width of the text field to 533. Hopefully that looks a little bit better. It's a little bit longer. So you can always come down a little bit and get it exactly perfect if you want to. But now the send to is a little bit wider. Okay, so you can actually see it. And then the text field is just a little bit wider, so you can actually come down a little bit. Okay, but we can set the preferred width on both. Okay, moving on to the second one, document editor number 2. We'll see how we can create kind of our own custom one, because remember, HTML editor's limited. I can only do what it allows me to do because it's a library. So if I look at the second document editor, you're going to see the same. I got my VBox, I have a grid pane. Okay, I have my label for the title. Here's my HTML editor before. Okay, this is on line 49. I'm going to comment this out. So I'm not going to use an HTML editor. Okay, if you ran that, it's about the same as what we just got done doing. Instead of an HTML editor, maybe I only want to send regular text. So they have what's called a text area. Similar to a text field, okay, but much larger. More for writing paragraphs or large amounts of text. Oh, thank you. Forgot that. Thank you. Yep, I need to create an instance of the text editor, text area class. Say that to a variable called editor. If I want this to look something similar, for the text editor, I can also set the preferred column count, which would be our width. Let's say 45 characters. And the preferred row count. Let's say 25 characters. So each one has its different. So the preferred size for the HTML editor is in pixels. Preferred size for the text area is in characters. Okay, and I'm going to add this to my grid. Okay, all in the same place, 0, 1. Do a Control-Shift-I. Okay, make sure it's JavaFX import. And here we'll see what a text editor looks like. you see it's about the same, except now I don't have all my options. All I have is a text area. It's like a text field. It's just ASCII characters. Okay, no special functionality. I can put tabs there or spaces, but no list, no bolds, no underlines. Okay, so it's not as pretty. But here I can do my own custom thing. So I can make whatever I want. I have full functionality of designing things. And what's nice about this is maybe I can't send HTML. Let's say for some email clients, all you can send is text. Okay, sometimes you can send HTML, sometimes you can't. So in this case, I could just send raw text. Or let's say we're creating some students created like a journal. They wanted to create kind of like a blog. And their blog only took text. And then it did some formatting to it later. There may be reasons why you'd only want to use text. What's that? What do you mean? In the text editor? I mean, you could. You'd have to write the back end for it, though. You know, like when I write this, it will compile into a Java app. Yeah, you could do that. Huh? Or Unicode? Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can change the character set. One thing I wanted to talk to you about was the menu bar. We're kind of running out of time. We may just spend 2 minutes here and look at a menu bar. So we saw the HTML editor. We saw the text area. We can also do what's called a menu bar. Menu bar is nice because instead of actually selecting a button, I actually have like a menu up at the top. Okay, so I can create a new menu bar. Okay, this gets complicated because there's also many layers. In a menu bar, I have a menu item. So let's say I want to do a file. That's what you commonly see on an app. They click the file menu item. So this is going to be my file menu item. I need to add it to the menu bar and add the menu bar to the layout. Okay, so on my menu bar, instead of get children, they have one called get menus. So I got to get the previous ones and then add the current one. Okay, and then here I added it to the root. Maybe instead of I do an add each, I just do an add all and add my menu bar to it as well as the grid. Okay, if I do a Control-Shift-I, add my JavaFX imports. Let's see if we can see this, and then we'll get out of here. Okay, up there at the top, you'll see my menu bar. Right now, there's no options. There's the file menu option. If I click it, I could add stuff like open or save or close. Okay, that'll be in the code posted online. That's it for today. We'll see you next time.